All right, we should be live. Good evening, everybody. This is going to be Tech Thursdays, episode 158. I just noticed that the tiles wrong. Let me update that. We're starting a little bit late here by 2 minutes or so. So no intro. We're just going to start immediately. This is the Computex week, so if you are someone who pays attention to the PC DIY market, you would know that this week, starting from the start of this week, it's all Computex. So all of the major media outlets that cover technology news are, most of them, we'll say about 80% of them, have gone to Taiwan, specifically to Taipei, to witness the future of technology and all the new announcements that are coming to the PC market later this year or early next year. So there were a lot of big announcements, in particular Nvidia. Actually, Nvidia wasn't actually part of Computex this year. Instead, Nvidia was hosting their own show that took place parallel to Computex. They had a keynote back on Monday morning, the local Taipei time, and they announced a lot of things related to AI. Obviously, all they talk about is AI. However, they did announce the RTX Spark, which is basically a consumer variant or a consumer-focused equivalent of the DGX Spark. And this is probably the most interesting thing out of all the things that were shown off at Computex. The only thing that stood out to me in all of this was the RTX Spark, because of the ecosystem change that this represents and how this will impact the PC industry forever. So we're going to talk about this. If you guys remember, 2 years ago, something similar happened in Taiwan back in 2024. And I didn't prophesize. I say prophesized. I talked about how what is happening at that time, 2024, could have long-term ramifications on how the industry could shift in the future, mainly because of what Microsoft was doing. If you want to know where the industry is being steered, you always look at Microsoft. To a lesser extent, you can look at Apple, because Apple is more of like they're more of like a forerunner or someone who's on the bleeding edge when it comes to hardware design, chip design. And it seems like the world has wandered after Apple. It's like everyone is trying to copy Apple when it comes to the consumer market. Microsoft has been wanting to be a part of that success for a long time. Even though Microsoft is still relatively successful, they don't have the sort of margins that Apple enjoys. And it's very hard for them to do so because they don't fully control the Windows ecosystem the way Apple does. Because though Microsoft does control the software stack, they don't have the full depth that Apple has when it comes to the software stack, since Microsoft is really just Xbox and Windows at this point. I mean, there's some other stuff too. There's some cloud services and other things. Obviously, Microsoft 365 or whatever, that's like really one of their bread and butters. But when it comes to how they compete with Apple, Apple has so many other things in their ecosystem that all work very consistently. It's all a very curated user experience that once someone gets into the Apple ecosystem, it's very hard for them to get out of that system. And Microsoft for years has been trying to get to some similar equivalent to that, or at least an approximate level of that success that Apple has managed to achieve in the consumer market. So 2 years ago, something happened. There was a product that was announced. There was a whole line of things that were announced back in Computex 2024, and I want to know who here, whether you're a new-time viewer or a long-time viewer, if you guys remember what happened at Computex 2024. Not last year, 2 years ago. 2 years ago was the pivotal moment in history for the PC, the consumer PC market. There was something that happened in 2024. That is the year. Now, I said this back then. There's multiple live streams of me talking about this, especially the Computex week in 2024, where we did a whole deep dive on this subject. But here we are 2 years later, and this is going to be I can finally talk about the continuation of what we talked about 2 years ago. I had to wait 2 years to talk about this again. But who remembers what happened in Computex 2024? What was announced? You guys remember? There was a company. One of the companies, I'll give you a hint. One of the companies was none other than Microsoft themselves. This episode of Tech Thursday is going to focus very heavily on Microsoft because Microsoft kind of flew under the radar this whole week at Computex when really they're one of the biggest driving factors in terms of steering the PC market to its destiny. Microsoft is the one in the driver's seat. There are hardware vendors, but the hardware vendors are the supporting cast. So what happened 2 years ago? Computex just makes it seem like the menu. We're going to talk about all the stuff that happened with the current Computex, but what happened 2 years ago? Because this is going to be the theme of this entire episode. To replace to ARM-based. Okay, that's kind of what I was talking about. There's a company called Qualcomm. I think that's how you spell their name, Qualcomm. Microsoft plus Qualcomm. They released something to the market in the summer of 2022. Yes, now you're talking. Snapdragon Elite. Snapdragon Elite. Or Snapdragon, what is it? Snapdragon X Elite or Snapdragon Elite 8 or something. The Snapdragon Elite. What is it? ARM for Windows or Windows on ARM? Windows on ARM. All of these things took place 2 years ago. 2024. It's already been that long. It's already been 24 months. We've been through this whole cycle now. It's been 2 year cycle. So this is known, I call this the beginning of the CPU wars. Now, this is very much like the Dune franchise, we'll say. Well, we're not going to call out who's the Harkonnens, who's Atreides, who's the Fremen. We're not going to break it down with that level of detail, although I could easily do that. We're not going to do that because I don't expect everyone watching this content to be familiar with the Dune franchise, so we're not going to do that. I'm going to stay away from trying to make analogies to other things that people might immediately understand. But we're just going to talk about it in general. So Microsoft, Qualcomm, Snapdragon plus Windows. So you had all these ARM laptops. Microsoft plus Qualcomm 2 years ago made a really big splash into the PC market with lots of laptop options from a bunch of different vendors. We're talking Asus, Lenovo, Samsung, Microsoft themselves, Surface Pro, Surface Edge, Surface, the Microsoft first-party laptops, all of them. All of the Microsoft laptops completely shifted. They abandoned x86. They all went to ARM. So you got to think about it. This represents a massive, massive shift because Microsoft has desired for a long time to follow in Apple's footsteps because they saw the success that Apple achieved with the removal of x86 and the transition to ARM. Basically, abandoning Intel in favor of their own in-house CPU design. And that is based off of the ARM architecture. And Apple made this transition successfully, and they basically became a trillion-dollar company. And we all kind of know the history of Apple and why they're successful. Microsoft wanted to get some degree of the similar result. So 2 years ago, Qualcomm, basically Microsoft went to Qualcomm and they're like, hey, you guys make really energy efficient chips. Let's make Windows on ARM. Let's do it. So they're like, okay, let's do this. So, and the Snapdragon laptops, they weren't terrible. Like if you wanted a basic laptop that had really good battery life, you could have gotten one of those throughout that year. And if you mostly just did email and web browsing, YouTube, whatever, you would be fine. You'd have good battery life, quiet laptop, relatively good experience, similar to an Android tablet, except it's a laptop. Now, the problem with the Snapdragon laptops was when you wanted to do things on a laptop that you normally don't have to do anything to think about it. You just install it and it works. Because of the ARM architecture under the hood, Windows required translation layers for native x86 applications. So there's a lot of compatibility. I won't say there was a lot of compatibility problems, but there were compatibility problems. There were already compatibility problems that surfaced very early on. Even during the Computex launch event, there were already known issues, and a lot of tech media were already talking about compatibility issues, especially for gamers. Gamers, ARM, Qualcomm, Snapdragon for gaming on a laptop was kind of a deal breaker for a lot of people. Meanwhile, you had the competition or the resistance from the x86. So you had Ryzen AI. AMD preemptively responded with Ryzen AI 300. Intel also did Core Ultra 200V series that year. So basically Lunar Lake, it came at the end of the year. But AMD basically launched Strix Point preemptively by 2 quarters. And because of that, they were able to kind of rain on Qualcomm and Microsoft's parade. And Snapdragon kind of fizzled out within 6 months to the end of that year. Because I remember during the holiday season, I remember going into a Best Buy to go look at Snapdragon laptops, and there was actually a Qualcomm employee in the Best Buy. He was literally stationed there to try to get people to understand the advantages of the Qualcomm laptops and try to basically sell customers on the idea of switching from x86 to ARM, or at the very least, determining if the user was a good candidate to adopt a Qualcomm laptop as opposed to your traditional x86, Intel or AMD. And I remember having a conversation with him about x86 and ARM, and because of who I am, he's not gonna be able to sell me on an ARM laptop because I know so much about the technology already. But he could immediately tell, okay, this guy, he already knows, all the stuff that there's no reason for me to try to sell him on this. So he basically told me, yeah, for your use case, Qualcomm, Snapdragon is not going to be a good fit. I mean, in certain use cases it is, but for your use case, it's not going to be the best fit. So he's like, I'm not going to try to sell you on an ARM-based laptop knowing what your use case is. Because, I start talking about, gaming and applications that run in x86 natively, like DaVinci Resolve and OBS and all these other things. And he's like, yeah, okay, for that, yeah. Okay, you're going to x86. So he knew he couldn't sell me on that. But we still had a really interesting conversation talking about the approach. He basically revealed to me that Microsoft and Qualcomm had this, it's really Microsoft had this grandiose plan to basically ditch x86 in the consumer market. He specifically said the consumer market. He did not mention the enterprise world, but he did say that Microsoft's end goal is to basically follow in Apple's footsteps and completely transition Windows to ARM natively, to the point where it's you don't really need to have these conversations about, hey, can my application work with compatibility mode? Or, hey, am I a bad candidate because I use this and that legacy app? He said Microsoft wants to get to that point, but the problem today, and keep in mind this was 2 years ago, is the software stack for ARM with Windows is just not quite there yet. It's still early days, so it's one of those things. So that was 2 years ago. So that's kind of the backstory of what we're going to talk about today. Because fast forward 2 years later, so this was basically the x86 versus ARM war began in 2024, in like the summer of 2024. It began, and now fast forward to 2 years later, we come to the second wave. The second wave. This is it. The second wave starts this year, because Snapdragon was if we're talking in terms of war, Snapdragon lost the war. Microsoft and Qualcomm failed to mount a strong enough offensive to convert enough of the market. And remember, I'm talking about consumer markets, so forget about servers, forget about data centers. We're talking about that later. From x86 to ARM, mainly because the software wasn't ready. Now, people might argue, well, Intel and AMD have better like laptop offerings, etc., etc. You couldn't get a gamer's laptop with an ARM CPU. I mean, like, why would you want one in the first place? But anyway, the point is, they lost the war. The first round of this big battle between x86 and ARM in the consumer space for Windows basically went to x86. This time, however, we're at the second round. And this time, things are going to be drastically different. Drastically different, because the players in round two, the contestants in round two, are slightly different. Microsoft is still one of the contestants, but this time, there is another partner. There is another company that is now going to team up, or has teamed up with Microsoft, to try its hand at finally defeating x86 once and for all. And if you watched a certain keynote address this past Sunday night, or if you're in Asia this past Monday morning, you know exactly, if you actually watch the entire keynote, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So who here can tell me who is Microsoft's new partner, Microsoft's new apprentice? If Microsoft is Emperor Palpatine, and Qualcomm was Darth Maul, who is now the Anakin Skywalker in this story? Yes, Nvidia is now the new apprentice. Nvidia is now the new sidekick, the new partner in this second wave of x86 versus ARM. So this is it. This is going to be where it gets really, really interesting this fall, because we talked about this we hinted at this coming last year. I talked about Nvidia CPUs, ARM-based CPUs, a while back. It's been a long time, been a little more than a year at this point. But I did mention this, and I knew that one day this would end up happening. I just didn't know when. I knew that when they announced DGX Spark late last year, I knew that at some point Nvidia is going to amass a large enough amount of chips to go to the consumer market with a really, really big push. And that moment will happen this year. So that is how things are going to change. Because we're basically in like a weird Revenge of the Sith type of moment in time when it comes to the PC market. I said I wasn't going to use movie or like media analogies, but I mean, these are just so obvious. It's so ridiculously obvious. So if you've seen the Star Wars, if you know about Star Wars, you know where I'm going with this. But basically, now there's Microsoft and Nvidia. 2 years ago, it was Microsoft and Qualcomm. Now it's going to be different. And the landscape has changed dramatically. The landscape has changed dramatically. In the 2 years that have transpired, Strix's point has continued to persist over and over So AMD has basically, ever since the Strix point, AMD has basically maintained the same lineup in the consumer space. Intel, since that time, Intel launched the Core Ultra 200S in the mobile, well, not S, that was 2024. They launched Core Ultra 200 in the mobile space last year. So you had Arrow Lake laptops last year in that space. Now, earlier this year, Intel has actually AMD launched. We can't leave out you know what. We can't not talk about Strix Halo. We'll just call it Ryzen AI Max, because the thing that has impressed me the most in terms of, as a tech enthusiast, as a hardware enthusiast, I've been saying this for a long time now, since 2 years ago. The mobile market, the mobile chips are far more impressive. It's way more action packed. Like the desktop space has become so boring. It's literally like watching a bunch of long-winded filler episodes of Dragon Ball Z where all they do is talk and there's no action. Whereas you look at the mobile space, the laptop space, that's where all the action battle sequences occur. You had Snapdragon versus Ryzen AI 300, and then Ryzen AI 300 basically destroyed Snapdragon by itself. Then Lunar Lake showed up like way later in the year, and it's just kind of like, yeah, man, now Intel's back in the game too. So then in 2025, Strix Halo, basically AMD launched a Super Saiyan 3 mobile CPU, and this Super Saiyan 3 mobile CPU is basically going to have to go toe-to-toe with a lot of things real soon. This thing went toe-to-toe with Apple, and we all know Apple is basically Majin Buu. You can't really win against Apple. You just kind of have to hold it off. So Apple is kind of the thing. Like, the goal is to basically put something out there that really wows the audience, wows the OEMs, the ODMs, and the consumers in terms of how it performs, how it stacks up to Apple. Because Apple is the industry leader when it comes to technology in the consumer space. There is no denying this fact. Apple is so dominant and so far ahead of everyone else that it isn't even close. The only thing that got really close last year was the Ryzen AI Max. The Ryzen AI Max is like the most impressive x86 thing that I've seen in like the decade. However, earlier this year, we had Core Ultra 300, I think is it 300V? Whatever Panther Lake is, I think it's 300V. We're just going to say 300V. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but basically Panther Lake launched earlier this year. And Panther Lake is almost as impressive as Strix Halo. It's more impressive in terms of the energy efficiency, but both of these chips are basically the primary drivers here in terms of x86 innovation. So those are the main things. And then we also have obviously the RTX Spark. And this is where things get really, really interesting. So it is all the RTX Spark. RTX Spark is basically Microsoft and Nvidia's secret weapon. Because when Jensen took to the stage and he talked about RTX Spark, there was a certain part during his presentation where he literally kind of took a stab at Qualcomm and why Qualcomm failed. He didn't say direct. He can never call out their name directly, but he basically implied, he strongly implied that the reason why the consumers are not open to adopting ARM is because the software was lacking. And there's a specific moment where he literally said, when he was holding those two laptops, those two RTX Spark laptops in his hands, and one of them had 007, the other one had Forza Horizon 6 on it, and he literally said, we are going to come to the Windows market, and we are bringing our entire software stack. That one sentence was Nvidia bringing down the hammer against x86. That's basically a declaration of war. That's declaration of war, because you have to know how to read between the lines when it comes to technology companies. Basically, by him saying we are going to bring our entire software stack, that's literally him saying Qualcomm lost 2 years ago because Qualcomm had no software, and Microsoft is, incapable of producing the amount of software stack required to compete with Apple. But we all know Nvidia. Nvidia is a very, very formidable software company. They're a chip design company, but they're also very much so a software-based company. And if there's one company that can bring the full force, the big guns, all the artillery to bear down upon x86, it is going to be Nvidia, with Microsoft's blessing. You know that Microsoft has allied with Nvidia because we already know Microsoft's goal is to shift to ARM long term. That's their long term strategy. And they see RTX Spark as their window of opportunity to get to that end point, to achieve their goals. So RTX Spark, man, very, very impressive stuff. This is basically DGX with a power limit in a laptop. So it's really interesting. If you think DGX Spark is kind of like a mini PC Strix Halo. These two things kind of can be used in the same manner. RTX Spark is basically like a laptop version of DGX Spark. So that means that you could get Strix Halo in a laptop, although there are like very, very few options. But it's more commonly found in a mini PC form factor like DGX Spark. So RTX Spark is basically like a DGX Spark in a laptop. That's what it is. And it's meant for the consumer market, which means that they're going to prioritize consumer-driven factors, like consumer-driven features, like OLED laptop displays, or high resolution displays, or things that appeal to consumers, specifically tech enthusiasts. They're really going to run and gun for the tech enthusiasts with this launch of RTX Spark, because they know that it's the enthusiasts that are going to be able to upsell their products naturally to their peers. And one thing that hasn't been talked about is the price. And I think one of the Achilles heel, if there is a weakness in this second wave, it's going to be price. And that was a similar weakness that occurred 2 years ago with Qualcomm, because the Snapdragon laptops were not cheap. And you couldn't really play games or any like super duper heavy lifting on them. So it was like, why are these laptops so expensive if they're somewhat limited in their capabilities? So that was the Achilles heel of Qualcomm, the software stack and the price. This time around, the weakness of this combo is definitely not software. It's going to be the price. 100% the price will be the issue, because most of these laptops are going to be upwards of $5,000 or more. Just letting you guys know right now. So these are not going to be cheap laptops. They're basically, Nvidia is expecting somebody to be able to, someone who can afford the Apple tax should be able to buy an RTX Spark. And when I say the Apple tax, I'm not talking about like a MacBook Neo. No, that's not what I mean by the Apple tax. Because Apple, in the last couple of years, Apple has actually made their products more affordable, more available to the average consumer. This is something that's kind of a new thing that Apple started doing in the last 3 years. The MacBook Neo is a prime example of this. So Nvidia is really running and gunning for enthusiasts. They don't really care about the lower end of the market. They're going for the super, the people who have what Jensen calls your $10,000 PC, like your $10,000 desktop PC. you should be able to get one of these. At least that's the assumption. That's the understanding. It remains to be seen how this will play out. But I do think that RTX Spark is probably going to deliver a pretty good experience at launch, unlike the Snapdragon Elite from 2 years ago. So, what do you guys think? I think this was the most impressive thing out of all the things that I witnessed this week in terms of technology. RTX Spark, I was not expecting it to happen the way it did. They're not available now. They're coming in the fall of this year. So around November is when we'll start seeing them. Basically around the holiday, the Black Friday season, which these things are not going to be on sale for Black Friday. But they will be available around that time in limited quantities. The true volume for RTX Spark will be next year, though. But with things priced the way they are, affordability is going to be a major, major problem for Nvidia and Windows or Microsoft. Well, that's the problem. See, it's all about RAM. RAM is the name of the game. And that leads me, that's a great segue into what I want to talk about now. And then we're going to talk about memory, because I think that what's going to cause people to delay their upgrade cycles is really the price of RAM. And unfortunately, with all the recent announcements, if you guys paid attention to the Nvidia GTC keynote that took place earlier this week, and then if you watch some of the other ones, like the Intel had kind of a boring presentation compared to Nvidia. I'll be honest, Nvidia talked about AI, but when Nvidia was talking about AI, it wasn't that boring compared to when Intel was talking about AI. Intel presented kind of more consumer-focused stuff because it was tailored to Computex as the intended audience. But Intel, I watched Intel's presentation. It was so boring, I ended up having to skip through it. Like I skipped along the timeline because it was so boring. Jensen, when he talks, man, I just listened to him the whole time. And I was not expecting to listen to Nvidia the entire time. But yeah, I listened to the whole 2 hours of that thing. Even the weird music video at the very end. The weird AI-generated music video that they played. I watched the whole thing. So he kept my attention because basically, Nvidia is forcing a permanent change on the market. So the sad reality is that the days of building a computer, like as a hobby, putting together individual components, those days are numbered. And we talked about this a year ago. And at the time I was like, yeah, I mean, this is kind of the end goal, is to have everybody just rent compute from the cloud and pay subscriptions for gaming. You know, we went into the reasons why this is the end goal. But this is more proof of that. Some of the stuff that they talked about. And the sad reality is that they're getting the entire industry to back them on this. Like, no one's saying no. I mean, the only people that are saying no are the component vendors, people who basically cater to that market. But even people like, you know, Main Gear and CyberPower PC, those guys are happy. They're not unhappy about these announcements. They're happy. They're boutique system sellers. I mean, they're, you know, it's similar to you building a computer, except you're just going to have one of those guys to sell it for you. They're happy. They're not unhappy about this. The people who are unhappy about this are the people who make individual accessories, people who make cases, people who sell, like, power supplies. You know, like, I guess if EVGA was still around, EVGA is basically toast. Nvidia basically, like, drove the final nail in the coffin for EVGA, because it's like, if you're killing off the like custom PC build market, who's gonna buy a power supply? Like, just the power supply by itself. Who's gonna buy a motherboard by itself? It's like Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock. Those guys, yeah, they kind of suffer to a degree because they lose the high profit margins from the motherboard business. Because the motherboard business, if you're spending more than like $200 on a motherboard, they're getting a lot of margin off of you for that motherboard. So they're getting really, really fat profit margins. So losing access to that whole thing, if it just goes away, yeah, they'll suffer to an extent, but they know that they'll just make up some of the difference by selling you a pre-build. You know what I'm saying? So those companies, those aren't really the ones that stand to suffer. The ones that are going to probably be at risk of going out of business are companies that sell like specific peripherals that are tailored to the PC enthusiast space. People who sell keyboards, people who sell gaming mice, random like computer related things, like LED stuff, 360 AIOs, air coolers, all these type of things that they're gonna have to reevaluate how their business model is going to work if this market goes away in the long term. So, the software experience remains to be seen. Are you sure subscriptions are going down? That's not what I've noticed. Yeah, there's the initial distrust of like Microsoft that caused people to cancel like their Game Pass recently. But I feel like that's more of a temporary thing. Games take too long for the value to be there. Games take too long for the value to be there. You're going to have to expand on that, because if I wanted to play 007, if I wanted to play the new James Bond, the 007 game that just came out, that's a single player game. That is like a one-time experience thing. Like if that's available on Game Pass, and if I'm only moderately or mildly interested in that game, do I really want to pay full price for that game if I can just play it using Game Pass? If I already have Game Pass and it's on Game Pass. Like Forza Horizon 6, same deal. No, actually, no, that's not the same deal, because that's a live service game. Live service games, let's look at live service games. So many live service games, whether you know it or not, a lot of them actually do a lot of the heavy lifting in the cloud, which I was not actually that surprised to find out. So, and some of these games look really good. You can play maybe 1 to 2 games a month, so paying a sub for all the games makes 0 sense. Well, that's where they need to. That's where they need to change the marketing on that. They need to come up with stuff like family plans and things. So like kids can also be part of that. Like if a kid was gonna play a game, and they're part of the parents, like the family plan, and it's all subscription based, that's probably going to be a lot cheaper for the parents than to have to like buy their kid components for the computer or a pre-build. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know about that. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and that's where a lot of the innovators in this space, in the subscription models, are going to come into play. But with the announcement of RTX Spark, and you guys already know, RTX Spark is going to be so expensive. Here's the problem that I think people are overlooking. When some new thing comes out, and it establishes a new, like kind of like an entry point, like at an entry point that's already really, really high, what this does is this creates... So it depends. If this is not successful, if no one buys this because it's too expensive, then it just fizzles out, and then Microsoft and Nvidia fail and lose the same way Microsoft and Qualcomm failed 2 years ago. But if this succeeds, and I don't know how... It's too early to determine like how the success of RTX Spark will... Like, how do you define what the success of RTX Spark is? Like, what percentage of the market does Nvidia need to get? Like, what's their market penetration rate need to be for them to consider this a success? I don't know that. It's too early to say. This is not going to be in the market until the fall. So I won't really be able to make an accurate statement on that until next year. But one thing I can say is that when something new comes to market and it's new stuff, it can command a premium early adopter tax, and it can also have this indirect effect of raising the baseline price for the industry if it's successful. If it's not successful, then it can't really do that. But if it is successful, then it can have that secondary effect. And we're living in a time right now where RAM, SSDs, the price of these two things has only gone up. They've only trended upward. I don't care about, oh, I saw the price of a memory kit go down by like $20 in the last 2 weeks. That is a small, minor thing that doesn't really, like, you have to look at the long-term correlation. So, in general, the price of RAM, we can say, using mathematics, has gone up. The price of SSDs has gone up. And the price of these two things, unfortunately, if you listened to Nvidia's presentation, are not going to go down anytime soon because of what's going on with this infrastructure build out. So it's kind of, that's it. It's just what it is. It is what it is. You cannot really deny that. Anyone who says that the price is going down, they're in denial, or they're just out of touch with reality. Okay, the latency thing. So let's address the latency question, or the latency drawback of cloud gaming. Yeah, that is a real problem. But you know what? There is something called caching servers. Caching servers. This is something that cloud streaming service providers already offer. I don't know if you guys are aware of something called caching servers, but you can look them up. Caching servers basically allow the content provider's stuff, so think of it like Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or Paramount Plus, or any, basically if a content provider wants to reduce the latency for their users, one thing they can do is deploy caching servers in a internet service provider. So think of someone like Verizon or AT&T or Spectrum or Comcast or Cox Cable, etc. These companies, the ISPs, the companies who once upon a time, well, they still offer cable TV service, the cable TV providers, these companies now recognize that they can put caching servers in their service provider environments to lower the latency. So there is nothing stopping game developers from doing this exact thing. This is the reason why there's a latency problem. Now, the thing is, to reduce the latency for gaming, you got to go way, way lower than with video streaming. So the caching servers for gaming are going to have to be a lot more robust in terms of capability, and I would assume the bandwidth links are going to have to be pretty substantial to be able to get you the kind of latency numbers that are required for the gaming, for cloud gaming, to be successful. So this is something that you guys, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but let's just say that there is an answer to the latency problem. The biggest limiting factor is going to be where the user lives. If someone lives in a rural area, most likely even a caching server is not, I mean, it'll help with latency, but it's not going to eliminate the latency. But if someone lives in a metropolitan area, a large city, where the service provider can deploy a gaming caching server, then those are the prime candidates for cloud gaming. And that is something that I can tell you right now, the game developers are actively looking into this concept because they want to go to cloud gaming. So the problem is You have two people. You have two groups. You have those against cloud gaming and those in favor of cloud gaming. So who is against cloud gaming? Who's against cloud gaming? Enthusiasts, I would say probably most enthusiasts and hardcore gamers are against. I think it is reasonable to assume that these two groups are against cloud gaming. But who is in favor of cloud gaming? Casual gamers, game developers, game publishers, hardware vendors. So hardware vendors, who is this? AMD, Nvidia, Intel. Oh, believe it or not, these guys are not against, well, they know that this is going to cannibalize some part of their business, but the long-term effects are positive. So they're actually in favor of cloud gaming. And this is the brutal wake-up call to the enthusiasts that none of these guys are on your side. Whether you knew it or not, now you know. And you know who also? Software vendors, Microsoft, etc. Like basically all of them. You know, they're all in favor of cloud gaming long-term strategy, as a long-term strategy. Because they have seen the success of Netflix, of Disney Plus in the heyday of cloud streaming. They have seen that transition for video media from DVD to Blu-ray and then now to cloud. So it's like there are certain problems, limitations to solve with cloud gaming. But we all know that those problems are solvable. You throw enough people, you throw enough money at the problem, and the problem will get resolved. You hire all the people to solve the problem, they are going to solve the problem. So, yeah, all the companies, the developers are in favor of it, the publishers are in favor of it, casual gamers are in favor of it. I've literally talked with casual gamers that have told me that they don't like having to upgrade their computer. To them, it's a chore, it's annoying, it's a hefty capex expense. So it's like if they could get the same experience out of cloud gaming, they would gladly switch to cloud gaming. So the ironic thing is that the gamers themselves aren't even united. They aren't even united. So, and the thing is, like, I don't know if they fully understand cloud gaming. They think, like, Steam syncing your cloud saves is cloud gaming. So, but that is a problem. You know, it's either a lack of understanding of how it works, but at the same time, they're in favor. So you have way more people. We're talking like orders of magnitude more people in favor of cloud gaming overall. And the sad reality is these guys are in favor of cloud gaming. These guys kind of tend to more in favor of cloud gaming, but they would be okay either way. These guys, they double dip. They win if it's cloud, they win if it's not cloud. So those guys are kind of like playing both sides. But it's the game developers that are in favor of cloud gaming. Why would game developers and publishers be for cloud gaming? Okay, if I'll answer that question because that's a really good question. If you're a developer, let's say you release a game. Let's say you made a game, and that game is called Crimson Desert. Let's say you made Crimson Desert. You made this game, and you release this game to the market. You have deadlines. The boss says you better get this game out. No more delays. Get this game out, or you're gonna be out of here in like 2 months. That's how cutthroat this industry can be. So you launch the game. It is not a cloud game. And you go and you look at the Steam reviews. You go look at the Steam reviews of the game. And what do we see? What do we see? It's like mixed reviews. Mixed reviews is the overall average. Like, and we're talking like launch day, maybe 2 days, 48 hours, 72 hours into the game launch, and it's like mixed reviews. And what do you read people? It's like game crashes on launch. Game crashes on launch. Game has horrible performance. Poor optimization. And then, okay, you click on this one. You click on this one to read the thread. You want to read the thread. Like, why are they saying that my game is poorly optimized? My game is so well optimized. It looks so good and it runs so good. And you go and read the topic. And the topic says something along the lines of incompetent devs, game runs at like 15 FPS on my 1060. It should be 60 FPS at 1440p medium settings. So you read this type of thing, and you're the developer, you're the one who made the game, and you read this thing, and it's like poor optimization, incompetent devs, game runs at 15 FPS on my 1060, it should be 60 FPS at 1440p medium settings. Refunded. The game is terrible. You know, or it's like, okay, game immediately crashes upon starting the game. Need help. You know, like, okay, so you basically see like threads like this basically all the time. There's always someone out there where it's like, oh, the game is crashing, or the game has horrible performance, or, you know, poor optimization. So one of the things about cloud gaming is that these type of problems, they just go away. They just immediately go away. So you can't have somebody negatively reviewing your game, giving you a negative review for poor optimization because they have a potato of a computer and they have unrealistic expectations of how the game runs, or they have no idea how to overclock their PC and they're literally running an unstable overclock and their game crashes because of the overclock, but then they go and blame the developers thinking it's a game problem. So these type of issues, these negative reviews, they literally disappear with cloud gaming. They literally go away. Meaning, once you shift to cloud gaming, the user reviews basically become like only reviews based off of objective and subjective opinion of the actual game content itself, not things that should not actually factor into the review. Because, you know, if the game is cloud hosted and it does perform poorly, then that instantly reflects on the developers, because that is 100% affecting every user. Because if it's a cloud-based game and everyone has the same gaming experience, then if there's a problem, they all experience the problem. So that would be like the one exception of where a negative review due to performance or something would apply. But that would apply to everyone. So it would be like an instant problem that they have to fix immediately. Yeah, so do you guys really think developers like it when some rando goes and like complains about the game running poorly because they're literally using a 10-year-old graphics card and they're expecting that the game should be playable at 1440p on their 1080p graphics card that was a 1080p graphics card a decade ago. You know, I'm not saying like all negative reviews are in that same vein, but I've seen quite a bit of that. There's a lot of examples of that with almost every single game. I call it unrealistic expectations. So if I see someone saying, "Oh, the game has horrible optimization," and if I click on it and if I glance at it briefly and I'm like, "Okay, this is a waste of my time. This is unrealistic expectations." So this is a user error. You know, this is like this person has no idea what they're doing. They should just not even play the game. So complaining about the developers and blaming it on developers when it's a local problem is not really fair to the developers, to be honest. But most people are able to see through that. But it's one of those things where it's a pain point for developers that they would really, really like to eliminate altogether. So, I mean, that's just one example. But you guys wanted to know, like, why are game developers in favor of cloud? I gave you one really, really compelling example of why they're in favor of cloud. I'm not talking about UE5 developers. I'm talking about game developers. I'm talking about the people who made Forza Horizon 6, the people who made Lords of the Fallen, the people who made, you know, name your game. It doesn't really matter. 007. I'm not specifically saying a game engine. I'm talking about the people who make games for a living. Doesn't matter if they're an engine developer that works for Epic Games or if they're an actual developer who made a game. Well, the sort of thing that I'm talking about specifically is stuff that is not actually the developer's fault. The developer shouldn't be held responsible if the issue that the user's complaining about is something that the user, it's a user side problem. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not talking about an actual bug with the game that needs to be fixed. Those are things that are legitimate problems, and those things do crop up from time to time. But most of the time, most of the games that I have played, and you guys who watch my weekend live streams, you guys know I have streamed a lot of different games, and I never have problems. The game always just works. It never crashes. It looks good. It runs good. Now, am I playing the game? Am I streaming the game on a potato? No. So maybe that's one of the reasons. But I also understand if I have an unstable overclock. So there's that too. You know, there's other things at work that could cause these crashes or issues or the claims that poor optimization. Poor optimization could be like clock stretching is causing poor optimization. You know what I'm saying? Again, unstable overclock. So stuff like that. But anyway, you guys wanted to know why developers and publishers are in favor of cloud gaming. That's one of the reasons. That's not the only reason. There's also, you know, time to market advantages. It's much easier to fix problems and do regression testing if your game is cloud hosted as opposed to client running. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like so think of it this way: if your game runs in the cloud and there's a bug with your game, you literally can easily fix that bug compared to if the bug exists on X amount of users, but then Y amount of users are not seeing the problem. So you got to figure out why is one set of users... You know what I'm saying? Like if you had to fix the problem, if there was a bug in the game and you had to go fix the problem, would you rather have to deal with fixing a problem due to a game that's running in the cloud, where it's very, very easy to pinpoint because you're talking one set of hardware to debug, versus like you got to go fix a problem that's affecting 20% of the gamers that play the game, but the remaining 80% are okay? So it's like now you got to figure out okay, what is the commonality for this 20% of the users? Or maybe it's only like 5%. You know, like maybe it's an even smaller number, which makes it even harder to pinpoint. So, and you go and try to test that area of the game where they're showing that there's a problem and you're not seeing the problem. So it's like, now what do? You know, it's much, much harder to debug and fix issues for a game that is not cloud-based versus a game that is cloud-based. Now, one way to fix that is like if the game was on an Apple computer. Because if it's an Apple computer, oh, everybody's got the same, you know, the same operating system, same like patch level, etc. Now there is still some variance there because someone might not update their software. Someone might be running older drivers. You know, there's these type of problems that come into play when you deal with traditional client-based gaming that a lot of people aren't thinking about. You got to think about how much more complex the problems are when you have no control over how these users are using their computers, and some amount of them are complaining, and they're giving you bad reviews, and what are you going to do? You got to fix the problem. So it is a real challenge that I think a lot of people don't really think about this from the developers' standpoint, but it's not easy. So, hopefully that right there is just kind of examples of why these parties favor cloud gaming. I mean, those are only like two simple examples. We could go into other things too that are infrastructure, you know, like they can get better utilization out of their server infrastructure because they're basically using the server. They're paying for the data center space, first of all. So they have to pay that lease, that rent, and if they're fully running the game off the server, that means they're collecting more revenue off of the server from the end users, so they can afford the capex and the opex more quickly. They can realize their ROI. So there's a lot of other financial incentives and financial benefits to cloud gaming if the game is already multiplayer to begin with. Games that could technically, well, actually, I say even single player games. You have to realize this. Even single player games like 007, a brand new single player game, even that game has a server infrastructure somewhere, because how do you distribute patches for the game? How do you update the game? You have to have some kind of server infrastructure in place to distribute the updates. So even then, the company that makes a single player game in this day and age, they have to have a online server presence to patch issues. So, I mean, you want to get better utilization out of your servers, why don't you just make the game all cloud anyway? That'll reduce your OpEx on your post sales support, because you won't have people complaining about, oh, this game is crashing, but you know, like only 15% of the users are experiencing the problem. But you got to devote resources to go and fix that problem, or go at least investigate the problem. So these are all things that a lot of people aren't thinking about. You guys have to think about things more broadly in terms of the ecosystem. It's not just, oh, you know, like cloud gaming is more complicated. I mean, yes and no. I mean, if it's a multiplayer game, it's already more complicated. So how does making it cloud, if it's already got servers to connect the players together, you know, like how is it more complicated if you make it fully cloud? Really, you introduce more challenges with like latency, and specifically latency. But like I said, there are solutions for that. So the industry is kind of at a on the cusp of shifting, transitioning, and it's unfortunate, but I think it's going to happen. We've seen this transition happen with media, with DVD, Blu-ray going to streaming, and it's only a matter of time. The way I see it, because of the way Nvidia has basically hostile takeover of the market and try to change everything, and force that change, and then like everybody's in on it. Like no one's saying no. Like literally no one's saying no. See the problem? No one is saying no. There is no company out there disagreeing with Nvidia. Show me a tech company that is like saying the complete opposite of what Nvidia is saying. Somebody show me a company. Give me a company that is like anti-AI. Like we're not going to do AI. We are not going to do cloud. We don't care about cloud. You know, like the answer is there's no company that's going to do that. No company's going to do that, especially if it's a publicly traded company. None of them. Nada. Not a single one. They're all like a choir. They're all singing the same tune. They're all beating the same drum. They're all singing in harmony. All of them. All the tech companies, all the chip makers, even like Lisa Su recently said in an interview somewhere that she was kind of jokingly saying like, we're living in such a weird time. Like everyone's just kind of all in the same boat. It's like we're all on the same side. Even when we're competitors. She even said that even when we're competitors. I was like, okay, so it's like now it's like all these hardware companies are all basically allying up with each other, even though they're technically all competitors. So it's kind of weird, but it's actually happening. So we might talk about that in another live stream and another Tech Thursdays, because there are some forces at work there behind the scenes that are sort of driving it this way. And it's not really Nvidia. It's actually something else, but we'll probably leave that for another time. Okay, the genius is in how to force gamers. How to force gamers? Well, I'll tell you the thing. Okay, that's a good... Okay. We can discuss that. Hold on, let's clean this up a little bit. So... how do you get gamers to go to subscription? How to get gamers to convert to cloud subscription-based gaming. How to do this? How to sell them on the idea? Well, you have to present the value. The value, number one, make the subscription affordable. Even if that means subsidizing it initially. Even if it means subsidizing it initially. To get them in to the ecosystem. It's no different from an ISP or an electric company coming to you and saying, hey, we would like to upgrade. We want to give you a good deal. We want to give you a good deal on your internet speed upgrade. Internet speed upgrade. So it's like, we will upgrade you from 500 megabit to 2 gigabit per second fiber internet. And guess what? If you sign up now, we'll keep your bill, your monthly subscription, the same price for the next 3 months. So if you're paying, you know, like, what is this? I don't know what this is, but it's like, I don't know, like, let's say if you're paying $50 a month for 500 meg, you know, we're gonna upgrade you to 2,000 meg for the same $50 a month for the next 3 months. But then after 3 months, the price will go up. This is what I mean by subsidizing the cost. Get the gamers, entice the gamers with some really good deal to get them to sign up. You know what I'm saying? Like, get them. The marketing people can figure this out. They can figure this out. They just got to come up with something. You know, I'm not a marketing person, but I know that they can figure it out. They can get creative. They can make it happen. They can get people to adopt the subscription model if they can somehow entice them to do so. And that's all it is. That's all they got to do. So that's one thing, how to convert them. What's another way? Make the traditional gaming model more and more expensive. So it's like now, it's like, okay, if you want to get the game, you got to get your pre-order in. So you get your FOMO. And if you want the season pass, or if you want the whatever the thing is, the premium edition or whatever, that's gonna be like $30 more. So let me find an example real quick. Oh, I don't have Steam opened up. Hold on, I gotta find an example. So let's make traditional gaming more and more expensive. What's an example of that? Let's look at First Light real quick. Let me look at First Light. What do we got here on First Light? Okay, First Light has standard edition for $70 and deluxe edition for $80. So what does deluxe edition have? Hold on, let me just find the example. Hold on. Steam 007 First Light on Steam. Yeah, let's go. All right, hold up. Where is this thing? Let me bring this up. Okay, look, check this out. Wait, close this thing. Okay, look at this. Look at this. Standard edition, $70. But the deluxe edition, $10 more. $10 more. Oh, what do you get for $10 more? What do you get for $10 more? You get 4 outfits. You get a weapon skin and the gleaming pack. You know what I would like to see? I would like to see the sales figures for games that offer these deluxe editions. I wonder how many gamers that buy the game at launch or even pre-order the game, any given game. I'm just using 007 because it's a recent example. How many actually will buy the deluxe edition over the standard edition? Because I wouldn't be surprised if the amount of people that actually opt for the deluxe edition is quite high. Just saying. Because you got all these people complaining about how, oh, games are so expensive now. You know, like $70 as a baseline is too much. But then yet when they want the game and they see a deluxe edition and they really want this one game, they're willing to spend even more. So you bought the deluxe edition and you also bought the 110 edition of the premium edition. That's exactly what I'm saying, guys. You guys are proving my point.
I only buy deluxe if it has early access.
You guys are proving my point. So, okay, you know what? Let me do a poll. Let's poll the audience. Do you buy the deluxe edition if you want that game? If you want the game, yes or no? If it's a game that you're like hyped out, okay, well this is probably gonna be kind of dominant in terms of. Well, people are voting no. So if it's a game that you really want, that you want the game, like you really want to play the game, you're really going to just buy the standard edition, even if you really want to play the game? If you're going to sink like 200 plus hours in the game, you're really not going to buy the deluxe edition? Maybe I need to reword the question. Because I am of the same opinion of Super Googly. I only buy the deluxe edition if it's a game that I really, really want. Like, in fact, I'll pre-order the game. If they've got pre-order... okay, and I'm pretty sure there's probably some kind of marketing study. I'm pretty sure these game companies have internal metric data on how the sales figures for their game goes. Like, I'm fairly certain that if a developer puts a pre-order bonus, then that is going to increase the pre-order sales of the game than if they did the pre-order with no pre-order bonus. I'm fairly certain that there is a noticeable correlation. Meaning if a company offers a pre-order bonus and another company doesn't offer similar type of game, we're saying both of them are like single player games. One company offers a pre-order bonus, the second company has no pre-order bonus. I'm fairly certain that the pre-order bonus will entice people to pre-order that game.
I bought the deluxe edition for $50 lol. I rarely buy and pre-order games at full price. There are sites for this. A lot of gamers are going this route.
The what? You get the deluxe edition for 50. Oh, you're talking about like GOG or something? But yeah, what I'm saying is, but it has nothing really to do with the price. The point that I'm making is, if you really want to play the game, are you going to buy the deluxe edition or not? That is the question. Maybe the price does matter, but look at it this way. It's like if it's a game that you are hyped up about and you know you're going to play the game, which means you know you're going to buy the game, why not spend the $10 and get all the content that's offered in the deluxe edition? You never pre-order any game until it comes out, and I can confirm I'll not be playing beta tester with launch. Most games you don't buy at launch anyway, and by the time I buy them, the deluxe edition is half the regular price of the game at launch. Okay. I still think, though, that if someone offers a pre-order bonus, they're going to increase their pre-order sales versus if they don't offer a pre-order bonus. You know what I'm saying? I just think, I mean, it's FOMO. It's literally FOMO at its finest. There are literally market case studies that show if a retail store puts up a limited time thing, they put up a sign limited time on some product, they will sell way more of that product than if they never put that sign up. FOMO is so real. FOMO is so real. It is a weird psychological thing. Seriously. So, I mean, I don't even know how we got off the... Oh, because we were talking about how to get gamers to convert to cloud subscription. Yeah, this isn't really... Is this related to... No, this is basically making... Okay, yeah, we kind of got sidetracked with pre-orders. Basically, where I was going with this discussion was... You make the games more expensive. You basically increase the prices on the games to the point where it's like most people get kind of like tired of gaming in that regard. What's another area? Hardware. Make the hardware expensive. Make the hardware more and more and more expensive. Make it real expensive. Because at a certain point, people are going to have to drop out of the race. Seriously. At a certain point, people are not going to be able to afford to... Or what will end up happening is they'll just keep their existing computer longer and longer and longer. But at the same time, as they hold on to that computer, for every year or two that they hold on to the computer additional, the price still is continuing to climb with the new hardware. And we've kind of seen that happen in the last 2 to 3 refresh cycles of computer hardware. I mean, I remember the best example I can give you is motherboard pricing. Motherboard pricing has gone up over the years. A lot. Like, so Crosshair 6 Hero. You know how much this motherboard cost me? $240 Or was it 220? We'll just say 200. We'll just give Asus the benefit of the doubt and make it as expensive as it could possibly be. $240 for the flagship Asus in 2017. 2017. Fast forward a couple years later. Crosshair 8 Hero. Guess what? 375. 2 years later. In just 2 years, Asus made the motherboard a lot more expensive. Then, when did things get really, really crazy? Crosshair Hero. What is this one called? The Crosshair. Oh. Actually, let's... okay, we'll just go with that. Crosshair. It's just called Crosshair Hero. What was the price of this thing? 700. Yeah. So, okay, we need to put in another one in here. We need to put this one in here. We gotta put this in because this is like way a huge jump. This actually, now that I think about it, I think this one was what, 650? No, I think it was also 700. I think it was also 700. I don't have this motherboard, so I don't know the price of it. But it was like 650, 700. It was like $700 when it was new. All right, I'm going to close the poll. It was kind of a close poll. About 60% of you said no and 40% of you said yes. So that's still close. That's still a lot of people opting to pay for the deluxe. 40% of this audience would pay for the deluxe. That's still a lot. But look at motherboard pricing. Guys, we're talking about flagship motherboard pricing. Flagship Hero. $240 in 2017, $375 in 2019. So the question is, does inflation stack up? So let me do 240 USD in 2017 worth today. Oh my goodness. According to the AI, if you adjust the inflation, if you adjust for inflation, 240 US dollars in 2017 equals $326 in 2026. 9 years later, a flagship motherboard would be around like 320 something bucks. But is it? No. It's definitely not. So this is what I mean by you just make the hardware more and more and more expensive. And before anyone tries to say, oh, well, you can just get a cheaper motherboard. Okay, yeah. You go and get what would have used to be a $50 motherboard, but today is a $300 motherboard. Or, okay, maybe that's a little bit too generous. What you used to spend $50 on a motherboard, now that you have to spend roughly $200 to get the equivalent type of motherboard, or pretty close. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, you can buy a low-end motherboard, a non-enthusiast motherboard, because it's like you don't want to pay the higher prices. But see, that's still proving my point. You make the hardware more and more and more expensive to the point where less people care to partake in the hobby because it's becoming stupidly expensive to be in. We can do the exact same exercise with graphics cards, but graphics cards prices are even stupider to look at compared to how they were a decade ago.
That's what people thought with Blu-ray, CD and vinyl, and they still sell in the billions even when a vinyl record now costs $150. People prefer owning.
Are you sure about that? In the billions? Are you sure that they sell vinyl in the billions? I don't know a lot of people that have a vinyl, like a record player. I mean, I don't have one. So I'm not sure. I don't know if I believe that statement on the vinyl part. You're saying vinyl sell in the billions. You're talking about billions of dollars or billions of records sold? I'm not sure about that. I myself don't have a record player, so it's like I don't know if I believe that. And I'm trying to think of who I know that has a record player. I think my parents have a really old one, but I can't think of any friends that I know that have one. So I'm not so sure about that. I mean, the Blu-ray and the CD thing, I don't know. Vinyl to me seems, I don't know about that. You're gonna have to show me some market data on that, because I don't. When you say billions, are you talking about billions of units sold, or are you talking billions of revenue? Because I don't think billions of revenue makes sense either. I don't think the vinyl and the Blu-ray market is a $1 billion market. Digital download quality is not even close to the bit rates for Blu-rays. Yeah, but the thing is, you have to keep in mind that we're talking about average consumer. The average consumer accepts the quality of the digital download. So, you guys are describing enthusiasts. You're describing like audio enthusiasts, video enthusiasts. You have to remember that that is such a small percentage of these markets at the end of the day. The enthusiast market is the it is a small piece of the market, but it is also the hardest customer base to satisfy. So it's a weird catch 2022 for a company to capture the heart of the enthusiast market, because if they get the enthusiast crowd, they basically get free marketing for a couple of years. But the moment they misstep, they lose the enthusiast crowd, and it's such a fickle demographic to hold on
Good
to.
vinyl and Blu-ray players are not cheap and sell.
Good vinyl and Blu-ray players are not cheap and sell. The PlayStation 5, the only Blu-ray players that I have are PlayStations. The PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4, the PS4 Pro, the PS5, and the PS5 Pro. I don't have any standalone Blu-ray player. Like, what does a standalone Blu-ray player do that a PlayStation 5 cannot do when it comes to playing Blu-rays? But I don't know. Like, what? Can someone explain to me, like, what is the benefit of having a Blu-ray player? Because I literally just finished upgrading my home theater, and the PlayStation 5 is literally the Blu-ray player. And I see no need to get an actual Blu-ray player. Again, you guys are looking at it from an enthusiast standpoint. We got to talk more broadly, because businesses focus on the whole market, not just enthusiast market. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I'm not an audio enthusiast, apparently, because I don't have a vinyl player. I don't have an AVR. I mean, I have a bunch of like stereo shelf systems for some reason, but I don't have an AVR. Plays more format. Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure like any random Blu-ray that I can get, I can just throw it in the PlayStation 5 and it'll play it. It's not region locked, if I remember correctly. You guys do realize the PlayStation 5 is a 4K UHD Blu-ray player, right? The PS5 can play UHD Blu-rays. Yes, it can. It can play. It's the only PlayStation that can. PS5 and PS5 Pro can play UHD Blu-ray. Not sure. Marin's. I don't know who those are. But again, you're focusing too much on enthusiast market. The average consumer is drowning in bills and can't afford it. Exceed is proving my point with a statement like that. Well, okay, so the thing is, the subscription, they can make the subscription affordable. You know what I'm saying? You can make the subscription affordable while also making the traditional hardware unobtainable or just nonsensical with irrational pricing. You know what I'm saying? So we got to think about this realistically. So RTX 6090, we're not going to talk about RTX 6090 too much, but just in general, the price of this GPU, the MSRP of RTX 6090 next year, next spring, next summer, when it launches, this thing is going to probably be upwards of $4,000 or more. It could easily be $4,500. So because of the way the pricing, the market has gotten, because you have to remember, all Nvidia has to do is they can just go and look at RTX 5090 pricing. What are retailers getting away with? So right now, the MSI 50 or the Gigabyte 5090 is $3,500. The Asus Astral is $4,000 currently today. Astral 5090 is, I'm just pulling this off of like Micro Center, $4,330. So there's nothing stopping Nvidia from being like, hey man, 6090, $39.99 MSRP, Founders Edition, $39.99, double the price of the MSRP of the 5090. And it's like, oh, well, we live in an agentic AI world, and all of this hardware is actually tailor-made for AI now. So it's like, if you're not able to afford it, too bad. You know, that's kind of how it is. This is what I'm talking about. Like, okay, what was the GTX 780 Ti was 600. Was it 600 or was it 700? Let's use a more recent example. 1080 Ti was what was it? $700. 1080 Ti was $700 in 2017, 9 years ago. RTX 2080 Ti was $1,200 almost 8 years ago. So think about that. Think about that. It used to be that the most money someone had to spend was $700 for the flagship GPU. Then it became $1,200 for the flagship GPU. Then it became, well, $2,000. Then it became $1,600? What? Discount? What? Oh, man. It's like, whoa. Okay, hold on. Hold on. That went down. 5090. $2,000. Realistically, $2,500. But we'll just say $2,000. So in, when was this? 2025? So, yeah, notice how it goes up. In general, it goes up, although, yeah, this guy was kind of the weird, I don't know, it actually went down. Actually, technically, that's not true. Let's remove this guy, because this guy's like, whatever. If we're going off of this, then it did go up. It did go up. So 1,500, it went 1,200 to 1,500 to 1,600 to 2,000. So it has trended upward. But the problem is the new baseline is going to make a big jump because of all the crazy excuses. And when I say excuses, some of it is true. Like, okay, The silicon manufacturing is so expensive. TSMC's prioritization of certain chips over others. It's all a bidding war. So it's like Nvidia's paying top dollar now for the chips. So they're going to have to pass a big chunk of that cost down to consumers. They're realizing massive, massive margins from the AI data centers, the AI customers. So it's like, why do they have incentive to charge $2,000 for an RTX 6090 when they could easily charge $4,000 for the 6090, and it would probably have similar sales figures to the 5090. The 5090 sales figures now. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's nothing stopping them from doing like $39.99 MSRP, or $34.99 might seem like it's more real, like $34.99. But then all the AIBs will just go and charge more, because look at what Asus has done with the Astral. So, that's kind of where things are going, like, it's not looking pretty good for the consumers. Because if your motherboard costs $700 and your GPU, if you want a true enthusiast GPU, $4,000, 4,000 plus 700, that's assuming the motherboard's still 700 next generation. So you're at almost you're basically at $5,000. You're at $5,000 after taxes, because this is priced without tax. So I know people outside the U.S., the VAT and all that stuff is already included, but in the U.S., this is pre-tax. So it's like, okay, now you want the CPU, okay? So CPU, Ryzen 9, 10, 9. 9, what is it? 10, 9, 9, 10, what would they call this thing? 10, 10,000? 10,000, 50, 10, what? 10,050X. $699. Just because. Or no. X3D whatever, $699 just because. Or the Core Ultra X9 395K whatever. Yeah. $899. $899 just because, like, for real. Like, it sounds like I'm making these prices up. These prices are steeped in reality. These are realistic prices. These are not unrealistic prices for these CPUs. Just saying. And the motherboards. We got motherboard pricing, we got GPU pricing, we got all the data. So if you want to go in full enthusiast, okay, let's bring in another GPU. The Radeon 10,000, what are they going to call this thing? RDNA 5, 10, what is the current one called? 1090, okay, 10, 80, 10,000, 10,800? 10,950 XTX triple or whatever. Like, okay, then the AMD thing, whatever this thing is called, whatever it ends up being called, the 10,950 XTX for $2,500, like, or some stupid number. Maybe not that high, but who knows? Maybe it's gonna be like 15. It's gonna be at least 1,500. I can tell you that. But we can say 2,000. We'll just say $2,000. Half the price of the 6090. Dude, it's still 50% less money than the 6090, and it's faster than a 5090. Well, I mean, this thing I think is basically, the enthusiasts will jump on this. I mean, at least a good chunk of them will. At that price. So I don't know. Maybe they can go higher. Who knows? I don't know. So, but it's like, okay, let's do a new build, right? The new build. $2,000 plus $900 plus $700. This is how much the upgrade will cost. Oh, by the way, we haven't even bought RAM yet. Why are you comparing numbers for the top of the line? Because people used to be able to buy the top of the line 10 to 15 years ago. Regular enthusiasts were buying top of the line back then. You know how much the fastest gaming CPU cost 10 years ago? Who can tell me how much the fastest gaming CPU a decade ago in 2015 cost? Tell me the numbers. It was less than 400. It was like 350. And that's without like a Micro Center bundle. It's like 350, guys. You know how much I paid for my you know how much I paid for this? When I bought it brand new? Now this was 2013, by the way. So more than 10 years ago. You know how much I paid for this at Micro Center? $260. Oh, it was $260 or $280. I'll just give Intel the benefit of the doubt. $280. I know for a fact it was under $300. It was like $260 or $280. I can't remember. Either way, $200 something for the fastest gaming CPU. So that was that. What was my motherboard? Z87 GD65 Gaming MSI motherboard. How much was his motherboard? Guess what? I think it was like 100. I think I paid like around 150 or so. It was like 150. 150. That's how much I paid. This was for like the highest end stuff. This was like the highest of the highest end. You do the inflation? This doesn't even come anywhere close to how much things cost today. For the enthusiast stuff. Because this was enthusiast stuff. So, things have changed. So, point number 3 is very, very real. This is very, very real. Make the hardware more and more and more expensive until you start pricing enough people out of the market that they just switch to subscription if they want to continue their hobby of gaming. And it becomes really, really hard for the true enthusiasts. Because now it's like, okay, the true enthusiasts, I guess they'll be more proud of building a budget computer with like a low-end motherboard or something that doesn't have a postcode debug. You know what I'm saying? Like, that just, to me, that's compromise. That means you end up settling for less, and maybe in the enthusiast's own little world, in their own mind, it's okay, and they're happy with it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't change the fact that they're settling for less. Now they're getting a motherboard that doesn't have a postcode debug. You know, it's missing things that they could have gotten for the same amount of money years ago. So to me, I see it as a downgrade in the overall, you get what you pay for. So the value proposition is there. It's much, much harder to get the satisfaction of building a computer while also knowing that you got really good value for money. Because I feel like that feeling has all but disappeared in today's market when it comes to electronics. Now it's almost like you spend a ton of money. It's like, yeah, you're happy that you built the computer at the end of the day, but it's not. You're missing the satisfaction of knowing that you got really good value. Because it's like, okay, if I got to spend $4,000 on a graphics card and around, you know, like let's say $700 on a CPU, $600 whatever for a CPU, and then $500 to $700 for a motherboard, Do I feel like I'm getting really good value? Knowing what I know about how much I spent in the past for the equivalent computer? No. I'm not. There's no way. So it's just a different. It's a different world. It's a different world we live in now. So, PC sales are way down, guys, way down, and I think they're going to continue to go down for the rest of this year. They'll pick up in Q4, I'm sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if you look at the year on year, like you compare Q4 of this year versus Q4 of last year. I'm pretty sure Q4 of last year is going to probably end up having higher sales than this year because of the way things are, even with new products. Yeah, they created a new product segment that made people pay more money. That is true. But I've already been over that. The whole i9 thing was a double-edged sword because it cannibalized the part of their enthusiast market. It basically shifted to lower. They basically ended up getting like. I think Intel did it for higher profit margin, to be honest. The introduction of i9. Because Intel i9 was introduced in the form of the i9 9900K. This is an 8-core, 16-thread CPU for the consumer mainstream desktop. And the price was, I believe it was $600. I think it was $600. I think it was $599, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was $649 actually. I think it might have been $649, but someone can actually fact check me on that. But I think it was around that much money. So this was the first i9 from Intel back in the year 2018. 2018. And they're like, okay, we're losing. We're gonna make less money selling to the top enthusiasts, like the top enthusiasts. And when they say the top enthusiasts, they're talking about people who buy HEDT. HEDT. So because you gotta look at it like this, the Z390 is like the price range. It goes as low as like, you know, what, like $200 something. You can get a Z390 at like 200 something bucks back in the day. Versus the alternative was the i7. I'm trying to remember now, what was it actually? They had the 6900K, 7980X, I think, 7980X, I believe, which was 8-core, 16-thread. I'm trying to remember what that was. What was the CPU? i7 7980XE. No, it was 18 core. It was 18 core. Hold on, I'm not thinking about this correctly. I meant to say i7 6900K, because to traditional that's the up, but we're talking about the old one. So this one was 8 core, 16 thread, from $1,000. It was $999, and it was from. I think it was 2015 or 16, somewhere around there. So traditionally, Intel would sell this with, you know, motherboards that started in the $300 range. So, X99 was around starting in like the 350 plus range, meaning the margins on the board would have the potential to be higher because the baseline is lower. I mean, the baseline is higher, so it automatically sets a higher ceiling. And then if they're selling premium features, and then also the CPU is a lot more expensive. So Intel must have figured, hey, we can cannibalize some of this, because this has quad channel memory, like Threadripper. This was Intel's old Threadripper equivalent. So you can cannibalize your HDT and have the enthusiasts go and buy this thing, this i9 instead. And they were successful. They were mostly successful in transitioning enough enthusiasts away from HEDT. Because I remember HEDT was like, if you were a true enthusiast, you had HEDT. You weren't on some like ghetto i7. No, you were on like the real deal. Like if you wanted heavy lifting, 8-core 16 thread back in the day, like 2015, it wasn't cheap. It was not cheap. So they were like, well, we can go down on margin. I mean, we can go down in margin on boards and make up more margin, or I guess they would actually make more margin on the CPU because this CPU is cheaper to produce than this CPU because this is a much larger die. This is like a Threadripper. So Intel came up with that strategy. That's actually very successful. It was actually successful in doing that. Skylake X it's not good anymore. It's not good unless you want it to be like an old Linux computer, like what I do with my old Threadripper computer. It's not good anymore. They're too old. You're talking about a computer from a decade ago. It's not good anymore. Like any 10-year-old computer is not good. Now, yeah, it's better than like a mainstream, like a 6700K. Yeah, it's better in multi-thread, but in terms of efficiency and performance for what that is, no. No, it's not good. Not anymore. But if somebody had one of these and they were using it up until, like through the pandemic, they would have gotten their value out of it. Because it was still, I would say the 6900K was still good through the pandemic. And then at that point, it was like not good anymore. So. The Nova Lake socket looks very similar to the current one, the LGA, the one for Arrow Lake. It is different. It's slightly taller, but it's still basically the same size. It's not a huge socket. We've already talked about it before. We've done a whole live stream on Nova Lake in the past. Nova Lake wasn't actually talked about, surprisingly, at this Computex. I was expecting to hear more about Nova Lake from Intel, and I was kind of disappointed. That's why I told you guys, like, the Intel keynote, it wasn't a keynote, it was the Intel presentation that they did was kind of boring, to be honest. It was quite boring. They didn't really, at the beginning they kind of talked about, like, Panther Lake stuff, the handhelds, but it's like after that, it was just a bunch of AI stuff for like the rest of the time. So, they talked about their server CPUs. That's because they kind of have to after what Nvidia did. They were going to regardless. It's not like Nvidia's presentation forced Intel to make quick changes to their presentation. It's too late. But Nvidia took a stab at x86 in the server market because if you guys watched Nvidia's GTC keynote, Jensen literally said there's a point in that guy made so many attacks at x86. It isn't even funny. Like he said that the world's data centers are already running ARM CPUs anyway. So it's all going to be ARM in the end. He's like, all the world's data centers are already running ARM. He literally said that in the presentation. back on Monday. So it's kind of tough, man. Intel and AMD are definitely having to play defense. They're definitely having to play defense to fight for x86 relevancy. So, is there going to be a Panther Lake desktop, or is that next year? There should be Panther Lake mini PCs, yes. So let's talk about the actual announcements. I guess we'll just use this. So here were the announcements. Obviously, RTX Spark. That was the big Nvidia announcement. Then what was the Intel announcement? They did I don't remember what they announced was new. Oh, Intel announced the like Intel based handhelds, like new ones, are coming out with Panther Lake inside, which was interesting. So that was cool. But other than that, though, like there wasn't really RTX Spark laptops. RTX Spark laptops, Intel-based handhelds, AMD, like the Ryzen, what was it? Ryzen 7 5800X 3D is coming back apparently. I mean, it's like, okay, that's cool, but you know the weird thing is like, not gonna lie, Nvidia's presentation was actually the best one. Because these guys, like Intel had really nothing. Intel showed stuff that we already saw and knew about from like CES. Like there was nothing. They didn't even mention Nova Lake. Nova Lake wasn't even mentioned. I think that's kind of a missed opportunity. But I guess it's because they want people to buy the 270K plus. Like buy it now, I guess. But I don't know. I think that's a missed opportunity. And then AMD announced a bunch of things that are like, at first glance, AMD's stuff looks like it's consumer friendly because it's like, okay, 5800X 3D coming back is good because if you're on an older AMD CPU and you're on AM4, then you can just get this, and that breathes new life into your computer. You don't have to buy expensive DDR5. You don't have to buy a motherboard. It's great. You just put the CPU in and you're done. I mean, that's interesting, I guess. I mean, it's... I think this was more interesting than the other thing. The Ryzen... What was it? The Ryzen 7... Like, this didn't make sense to me. Like, why? Why do we need this? Like, they announced another X3D, but it's a Zen 4 X3D, and I'm thinking, like, why are they doing this? Because, like, okay, if I was AMD... If I was the product manager, or if I was related to any one of the decision makers who basically order the wafers from TSMC, I would have already by now stopped all production of Zen 4. Why are they bringing another Zen 4 SKU? Unless these are basically failed 7800X 3Ds. Like, they just weren't good binning or whatever, but they work functionally at lower frequency. Like, I don't understand this. Intel announced Celestial. Yeah, but that's already... We already know that. Intel Celestial stuff is basically the handheld stuff. The Panther Lake stuff. We already know that. So it's like, that's already in here. But I don't understand why this needs to exist. I don't get this. The 5800X 3D coming back is fine. That I understand. Because it's like, okay, that's like a big play. That's an appeal to gamers who don't want to buy DDR5. And they feel like they're trapped. Because of memory prices. So, That it's cool that this is coming back. That's okay. But this, like, why does this need to exist? Like, if someone really wants to go on AM5, why would they get this if they know they have to buy DDR5? Then they have to budget for DDR5. And if they're budgeting for DDR5, they might as well get a 9800X 3D instead of this. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand Zen 4, like, why Zen 4 needs to exist. So, the same way that 13th gen doesn't, or 14th gen, I guess, doesn't really need to exist anymore. I mean, okay, never mind. 12th gen doesn't need to exist anymore. 12th gen doesn't need to exist anymore. I don't know why 12th gen's still around. But, yeah, it's the same vibe, although to me it's worse. It's like a worse vibe than when you look at Intel's lineup, because it's like, okay, Intel still makes 12 and 14, but 12 and 14 are made by Intel, so it's like they're getting better profit margin off of that than Arrow Lake stuff, because they go through TSMC for that. Zen 4, the problem with this is like, okay, you're having to buy wafers from TSMC, so it's like, why are you allocating wafers to old Zen 4? Like, I don't understand. Yeah, they did extend it, but the point that I'm making is like, why does this need to exist when the gamers can just get the Zen 5? I don't get this. No, 5800X 3D. 5800X 3D is $349. 5800X 3D equal $349. That's totally fine. That's actually a good price. Because you do understand the original price. Original price was $449. If you didn't know, now you know. So the 5800X 3D coming back is actually $100 cheaper than its original MSRP. So this right here proves that the whole, oh, we have to raise prices because of inflation. That I don't really buy that argument, because it's like, okay, you launched this CPU over 4 years ago, and 4 years ago it was $449. Now you're bringing it back and it's $100 cheaper. So it's like, after 4 years of inflation, it's $100 cheaper. So to me, there's nothing wrong with that. I question 7700X 3D. Like, I don't understand 7700X 3D. It's just adding another SKU for some arbitrary reason. Like, in my opinion, AMD doesn't need to be introducing more of these older SKUs. Like, I guess older architecture SKUs, like Zen 4. Oh, they're all out? Oh, they finished all, they stopped production of 14 now? When do they stop, when do they EOL 14? Because I wasn't aware of that. I thought 12 and 14 were still around. I guess 12, I wouldn't be surprised if 12 was EOL'd. But when did 14 go EOL? Actually, when did both of them go EOL? I don't... Did they announce the price? I think they probably did. $329. It's $329. It's $329. July 16th. I mean, yeah, it's... I don't know. If someone was considering this, I would just tell them get 9800X 3D. Save another, what is it, $100 or so, and get the 9800X 3D. Don't get this thing. Like, I don't understand why this thing needs to exist. Or if you're on AM4, this is fine. $350 to reinvigorate an ancient socket at this point. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So, you got to do what you got to do. If you're someone who wants a decent upgrade and you don't want to spend a ton of money and you don't need to buy a new motherboard, you don't need to buy RAM, this is actually quite good. This, I just don't understand. Like, if someone's going to make the jump to AM5, they might as well just go to the latest and greatest generation. Go to Zen 5. Like, don't go, why would you go to Zen 4? Zen 4 is from 2022. Well, I suspect that this is not going to be high volume. This 5800X 3D. It's getting some limited time branding. It's limited. It's like 20th. What are they calling it? The 10-year anniversary. You know, I find it weird AMD's declaring it 10-year anniversary when it's not even 10 years. Like, hold on, let me find the thing. Where is it? New X3D. Here it is. So, yeah, here it is. So, look at this. AMD AM4 10 anniversary, 10 years anniversary edition. Last I checked, AM4 launched in 2017. So I guess it's like, it'll be almost 9.5. So they're doing the 9.5 and they're just rounding up to make it 10. But it's technically not 10 years for AM4. Just saying. I know they showed it off at some kind of press event in like October of 2016 or something like that. I remember that because they did the whole like Blender Intel i7 $1,000 Intel 6900K with quad channel RAM versus an unnamed AMD upcoming CPU, and the AMD CPU beat the $1,000 Intel CPU. And we know that later on, we all know what that CPU was. That CPU was the Ryzen 7 1800X, which would go to launch in March of 2017 alongside the GTX 1080 Ti. For 10-year life in 20... What do you mean? Oh, you mean it's going to last for 10 years? I'm not sure what you mean. No. Anniversary, they're claiming it's like 10 years of AM4. Yeah, it'll be 10 years next year, but not this year. So I don't get that, but it's like, whatever. It's like 80% of the people who are going to be buying this thing have no idea. They're going to believe that it's 10 years, you know? And by the time this thing goes to market, when you get very technical, it'll be like, oh, it's 9.5, or it's about 9.5. So you might as well call it 10 years. But I'm just saying, for accuracy, it's not 10 years. And then this thing, I don't understand. Like, I don't get this thing at all. Yeah, AMD, I'll be honest, AMD had like the weakest lineup. It's like, to me, it was like, I don't know what AMD even... Like, they showed off these things, and it's like, okay, that's cool. What about GPUs? You know, like, and it's like, okay, well, FSR 4 is coming to RDNA 3, and then early next year, RDNA 2, which is great. That's really good news, but as an enthusiast, you know, like, the most enthusiastic thing was bringing back the 5800X 3D. Like, I don't know, like, that's the only thing that seemed... There wasn't a lot of hype, is what I'm saying. Like, there wasn't a lot of hype for the AMD stuff. And then we go look at Intel. Intel announced, like, handhelds. Because Intel wants part of that, you know, high margin, kind of low volume handheld. I don't think handhelds are a big market. I could be wrong. I personally don't have any gaming handheld like this. The only gaming handheld I have is the Nintendo Switch 2 and the Switch 1. That's it. I don't have any Windows handhelds. I don't intend to get any Windows handhelds. So to me... this market, the handheld gaming market, is a low margin. No. No. That's not what I meant to say. High margin, low volume market, which means they're selling handhelds more for like enthusiast type crowd. People with enough affordable income or discretionary spending or discretionary income that they can go and throw money on this or any of these handhelds, like the Xbox Ally, for example, for whatever reason. Because to me, like, if a kid is asking their parents for like a $900 handheld, I don't know. If I was the parent, I'm not going to spend the money. Just saying. So this is it's weird because I don't know who exactly the intended demographic is for these high-end handhelds, these premium handhelds, other than hardcore gamers. I don't really know who this is for. I don't know anyone personally that has a gaming handheld besides the Switch 2. Yeah, not even Steam Deck. So, I guess Steam Deck, but okay, Steam Deck pricing is going up too, though. That's the stupid thing about it. So it's like, I really don't know how big this market is. Because I watched Intel's press conference, and I did like the announcement of this. I did like this, but I kept thinking, like, I don't know, because if I really wanted to game on the go, I would much rather have a laptop. You know, like a thin and light. Like one of those premium laptops, like the Asus ProArt or something. Those things appeal to me more than something like this. Which is ironic because Nvidia showed off like a bunch of RTX laptops. Like Nvidia showed off stuff like this. And when I saw this, man, okay, see, this is appealing to me. I would much rather, I'm way more interested in this than in some gaming handheld. So I really don't understand those premium gaming handhelds when you can just use a laptop with a game controller. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand. Maybe there's something that I'm not understanding about gaming handhelds. Steam Deck is sold out in less than 24 hours at the new price of $950. Yeah, but I don't think the Steam Deck has a lot of volume. I don't think that there's a big quantity of Steam Decks. That's why it's selling out. It's selling out fast because there's not a lot of volume. Yeah, but you know, I think about this. It's like, I don't know. I kind of think that RTX Spark has a much broader appeal than the Intel gaming handheld. Even though I know that the RTX Spark is going to be way, way more expensive. Like, it's not even close. Like, these things exist in completely different segments. But as an enthusiast, this thing appeals to me a lot more than a gaming handheld. So, but yeah, I like that Intel's doing a gaming handheld. They're taking another swing at it because it kind of fizzled out initially with the old Intel Alchemist. I think it was Alchemist or was it Battlemage? Whatever the first MSI Claw was, that kind of fizzled out. But yeah, Intel, I don't know. Intel's kind of all over the place right now. But I understand the strategy. It makes sense to me to try to go into a lot of these consumer markets with this new stuff. Because these chips are quite good. These G3 is quite good with the new Celestial graphics. Man, yeah, that's pretty good. Do you see a mass migration back to consoles in the future? That's an interesting question. I thought about that a few months ago, and I realized the console market as we know it might also change. The only company that I can see keeping the console market the same for the next generation is probably Nintendo. Because I think Nintendo is the most traditional when it comes to, I say that they have the most wacky console, but Nintendo is the most traditional when it comes to adopting an ecosystem and a selling, like their selling model, their business model is not, it's the furthest away from pure cloud gaming, where Microsoft and Sony are far more likely to migrate at least a larger portion of their gaming audience to cloud-based gaming than Nintendo. So if there's any company that is likely to hold the line at the traditional gaming segment, it's probably going to be Nintendo. Sony will also probably be slower to transition over to cloud compared to Microsoft. I think Microsoft, obviously Azure, they got their Azure footprint. They're really, really heavily investing in AI. Microsoft is super heavy in AI on the back end. So, and if Microsoft can't fully utilize their data center capacity for AI like they want to, because of electrical grid, whatever, they can just pivot to gaming in the cloud. So Microsoft does have alternate paths to success compared to the other two. I think the other two are not going to be as easy to change. Nintendo more so than Sony. I think Sony will be more flexible than Nintendo in the long run. The supply channel available oral FTC data. I mean, do you guys, is anybody thinking of getting one of these? Did they even announce the price on any of this stuff? Is anyone getting an Intel handheld? Let's do a poll. Which of the following handhelds are you interested in? And the choices are going to be Intel Arc G3 based handheld, AMD Ryzen based handheld. So that covers like Xbox, i.e. like Xbox Ally. So it's like, for example, Xbox Ally. Doesn't have to be the Ally though. Or Nintendo Switch 2, and last but not least, Steam Deck. All right, I want to see what you guys think. Poll is up. Vote for which one you are more interested in. Oh man, immediately switch to. Immediately switch to. Immediately switch to. If I didn't have a Switch 2 already, I would vote Switch 2, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I would vote Switch 2. If I didn't already have one, I would vote Switch 2. I'm just saying. That's the only one that I find interesting. Man, Switch 2 is dominating. Nvidia wins again, because Nvidia is inside the Switch 2 with that ancient Ampere RTX 30 series generation. Hilarious. Nvidia always wins. Man, what's this? The mighty Steam Deck is tied with Intel at 9%. I do think, though, like, just thinking out loud, if I was going to get a handheld that could play my Steam games, I don't know. I might actually get the Steam Deck over... Well, I say that, but then realistically, it probably not. I'd probably end up getting a Ryzen-based one, because I feel like the Ryzen ones still have the most options. So I haven't paid attention to handhelds that much, so I don't actually know all the different handhelds. But I don't know. We got to see some reviews on the Intel stuff, but I think that the Ryzen-based handhelds have the biggest range in terms of options and price points. Steam Deck, oh yeah, you're right. But Steam Deck is, it's like Valve. When I say AMD Ryzen-based, the reason I meant Windows-based handheld. Like, that's why I put Xbox Ally in parentheses. That's what I mean, to differentiate Steam Deck from... Because Steam Deck is, you know, Valve's proprietary OS and everything. Well, not proprietary. It's like their Linux distro. Whereas everything else, like all the MSI, Legion Go, Xbox Ally, etc., they're all running Windows. That's what I mean. Yeah, I do think the Steam Deck does have really good trackpads. I saw Legion Go at Best Buy when I was buying my TV. When I was upgrading my home theater system, I was looking at the handheld at Best Buy. They had a demo unit, and I was playing around with it for like 5 minutes. There was 2 different Legion Go's from Lenovo, and it was like, okay, it looks cool. You prefer SteamOS to Windows handheld? Yeah, Nintendo's winning, guys. I don't see anyone else winning this except Nintendo. Man, Steam Deck crept up though. It was tied with Intel Arc, and now it's tied with the Windows Ryzen handhelds like the Xbox. That's hilarious. Steam Deck is coming up fast. Well, not fast, but you know. But see, this kind of proves my point though. These poll results are basically further reinforcing what I've always assumed to be true, that the handheld market is mostly just Nintendo at the end of the day. I mean, I'm just like look at me. I have a Switch 2. I don't have an Xbox Ally. I don't have a Steam Deck. I don't have, well, okay, the Intel thing's too new, but you guys get what I'm saying. And I'm a tech enthusiast. And I have a Switch 2, and I don't have those Windows or Steam Deck. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, I don't know what the total market size. I don't know what the TAM, total addressable market, is for these handhelds that are not Nintendo Switch 2, is what I'm saying. Because look at that. Nintendo is at 54%. That means Nintendo Switch 2 by itself is more desirable over those other handhelds by more than half of the audience, at least out of the people that have voted. But I think if everybody that was watching right now voted, we'd probably still end up with a similar ratio where Nintendo Switch 2 still wins. So anyway, this is interesting data there. I think that's all I wanted to discuss. We talked about Spark. We talked about the ARM versus x86 round 2. That war will basically happen later this year and most of next year. Yeah, PC industry is changing, and that's basically it. I mean, Computex's year was kind of boring, guys. I'm not going to lie. It was kind of bland. As an average person, not 3D artist, comparing RTX Spark to a MacBook Pro M5 Max, I'd rather spend the money on the MacBook. GPU has the same relative performance. Yeah. Well, see the question? I mean, okay, not the question. The thing you have to keep in mind is, do you prefer Mac OS or Windows? And I guess maybe Linux, but you know, at least for now, do you prefer Mac OS, the software, over the Windows operating system? That is what you have to ask yourself. Because here's the thing, guys, RTX Spark is so strong. Like, Nvidia has come out with a monster mobile CPU. This CPU shares a monolithic, it's basically monolithic CPU plus GPU on a monolithic substrate. So this is different from what you have from AMD's the closest equivalent from AMD is none other than the mighty Strix Halo. Like I told you, this Strix Halo is basically Super Saiyan 3 Goku in this story, because it has had to basically, it's going to have to hold off, it's going to have to hold the line for so long until newer hardware comes out next year. But basically, you got Strix Halo, and you have Nvidia's RTX Spark. What is this thing called again? RTX Spark. NV1, I guess? What's the name of that chip? And this ain't cheap. But neither is Strix Halo. This is, CPU plus GPU also. CPU plus GPU also. The difference is, this has that thing where you want the workloads local to a CCD. Here, it doesn't matter because it's monolithic. And they're going with very, very high interconnects, especially for the big, like the server class stuff. They're going PCI Gen 5. They're going PCI Gen 5. This is where Nvidia has declared that things will be different. Nvidia's CEO declared this week that Nvidia will bring their entire software stack to bear. They're bringing the whole software stack. That means that okay, for those who do not understand how CEOs speak, that is literally, let me translate this for you. This statement that he said this week, this literally means I have an entire business unit of software developers that is dedicated to making Windows on ARM work with Nvidia hardware. That's basically what that means. He basically means that they're not going to fail the way Qualcomm failed when it comes to software, because they're bringing their entire software stack. All their AI stuff, all their CUDA NN, CUDA this, CUDA that, GeForce this, GeForce that, all those things will already be there. They will bring all of it. He has made that declaration, meaning that is code for, guys, we aren't noobs like Qualcomm. We're pro. That's basically what he's saying. For those who don't understand how CEOs speak, that's literally what he said. He implied all of that in his presentation. So no, this is going to be very, very different from Qualcomm. Very different from Snapdragon. This is going to be a first-class experience when it launches this fall. It's not going to be some, half-baked, oh, you can't play this game because of some incompatibility issue or some driver issue or some lack of the developer support issue. No, none of that stuff's going to happen with the RTX Spark. There may be some onesie-twosie corner cases, but no, it's going to have to work. Down the wormhole, also referred to as rabbit hole and all that. What? All of this is happening because I'll tell you why this is happening. Everyone wants to defeat Apple. Now, I use the word defeat. This doesn't mean that they want to put Apple out of business. What this means is that all these companies, in particular Microsoft, is like the one with the highest desire to win here. All of them want that spotlight. They all want that. They want to be the industry darling that Apple has been for so many years. Man, I could have talked in terms of like Dune, the whole live stream, but we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. We're not going to bring Dune into this. Because I already thought of like who is who and all this, like which Dune character is which company. But no, we're not going to go there. But basically, everyone is vying for that spotlight. They all want to be the superstar in terms of technology, the most innovative, the best in class hardware, best in class software, specifically in the consumer market. Nvidia doesn't care too much about the consumer market, but Microsoft cares about the consumer market. They might not always seem like they show those signals. They might not signal to the consumers that they're on the consumer side, but they want the consumers. They want to be the most successful in that consumer market. So I mean, who wouldn't? If you're a Fortune 500, like why would you not want to be in that scenario if you're somewhat consumer based? So this is basically going to be ARM versus x86 round 2. But remember, guys, it's all the main goal is to prove to the world that Windows can go toe-to-toe with Apple in terms of battery life, single thread performance, memory bandwidth, user experience, which is probably going to be the hardest one to achieve, and software compatibility and overall ecosystem cohesiveness. Those are a lot of those points were lacking with Qualcomm 2 years ago. So, and the energy efficiency thing is kind of the main driving factor why they're going ARM, because they've seen the success of Apple Silicon. And now you go look at Apple's memory bandwidth numbers. And the only company that has been able to get those type of bandwidth numbers is Nvidia. With their designs, their silicon design, their chips design. So that's the reason why Microsoft has a new ally now. So basically, the way I look at it is Nvidia has two focus areas. One is AI, and that has a whole web, a whole tree of different things that they're going into. But the other one is how do they get back that consumer, like how do they get into consumer in another area that they weren't already dominant in? And that is through the allying up with Microsoft and going into the ARM CPU architecture and selling to both sides, selling to AI factory customers as well as enterprise with all their Nvidia CPU, the Vera CPU, and reintroducing the Nvidia into the consumer space in the form of the Nvidia CPUs, the RTX Spark. Because they already know they've basically like gobbled up mostly the entire GPU market. So it's like, how do you grow your business even more? Well, CPUs. Take from Intel. AMD also stands to lose a lot, actually. In fact, looking at this more broadly, the company right now that is at the biggest, that carries the most amount of risk is AMD. For this year, for at least for the next year, AMD carries the most risk because all of AMD's next generation stuff that will wow investors is all mostly slated for the very end of this year or next year. So they're carrying a lot of risk for their next two to 3 quarters because Intel's got new products coming out both in the enterprise market with their new Xeon. They announced their Xeon CPUs. We all know Nova Lake is it's going to come out. It's going to be great. So Intel's got some real winners on their hands this time around. And Intel is a big company that has a lot of like a lot of stuff riding on their success, including the US government apparently. So they're kind of set up to not fail, and even if they do fail, they can somehow still survive, which is kind of what happened with them 2 years ago. Intel kind of flopped 2 years ago with Arrow Lake in the desktop space, so they ended up ceding a lot of market share to AMD in the enthusiast space. But the reality is Intel is kind of too big to fail because a lot of gamers still ended up buying Intel CPUs via pre-builds from places like CyberPower PC. So they ended up getting like Intel Core Ultra, So that's why I'm not worried about Intel. I'm not afraid for Intel's future at all. Like I've said this multiple times, they can fail and they can still get up, and they can still be propped up to be successful somehow. Like it'll just be forced upon them. Other companies don't have that luxury. So AMD doesn't really have that luxury. So AMD is actually in a position now where they're going to start having to carry a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk in AMD right now because it's all a bunch of carryovers from the last year. Nothing really new. Nothing to sway investors. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Helios and all that stuff for AI, they're chasing AI just like Nvidia, but where's the consumer stuff? Like, I don't know. You guys tell me. Zen 6, we already kind of know what that's going to be. And that's supposedly AM5, which if so, then that's cool, I guess. It still needs to deliver on certain key indicators in terms of metrics to be considered successful as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not talking about performance. I'm talking about like things that they're lacking functionality wise. So yeah, AMD's in the worst spot right now. It's like no one really notices it, but it's there. Intel's in a pretty good spot. Nvidia's in a dominant spot right now. And we'll just see how this plays out throughout the rest of the year. Intel Xeon 6 and 6, there's so much disinformation of the numbers of SKUs. Intel owes all of the $46 billion in Intel Inside price fixed fees. Who do they owe that to? Who do they owe $46 billion to? What is that? Buying back U.S. bonds or something? Like, what is that supposed to be? All I know is the only company right now that is basically winning on all sides is Nvidia. And I find it ironic that in the first half of Nvidia's keynote at GTC this past week, he catered his entire presentation to the companies that are investing in the AI build-out. Then in the second half, or at least the kind of the middle portion, like 70% of the way through his presentation, he started talking about RTX Spark and local on-prem AI. And he even said, like, hey, it doesn't cost any tokens. When he literally spent the whole first half of his presentation talking about tokens equals revenue. And selling people on the idea of tokens equals revenue. Cloud subscriptions for AI. Cloud services. And the age of the agentic AI. And then he starts talking about how, if you get RTX Spark and you have an RTX workstation, you don't have to pay for tokens. I was like, whoa, that is really weird. He's like literally playing both sides of the AI coin. Wow. What? Oh man. That's crazy. That is crazy. It's like Nvidia cannot fail right now because of the way that's set up. They're appealing to the cloud AI and the on-prem AI. My goodness. Wow. And where was AMD? Like AMD was like missing in action the whole time. Like what was AMD doing the whole time? I don't know what was going on with AMD. AMD was just kind of a dud this year at Computex. It's like their best announcement was bringing back 5800X 3D. Dude, the Jensen presentation was actually really, really good. I mean, if you listen to it, if you think critically about it, you're like, oh my goodness, they're playing the whole market from all sides, and they're winning on all sides. They've set up so many little like safety nets too. Because the thing is, they know it's like, okay, if AI fails somehow, we'll just keep on collecting the money from the gamers. We'll just keep collecting all that money out of the gamers. Just keep charging like $5,000 for the next flagship CPU and then trickle down everything appropriately. You know, you can have some like RTX 6050 or something for like $300 or whatever. It's like for some low end gamer. You know, like they can do that. They know they can do it. Because like, what's the gamer going to do? What's the gamer going to do? Not buy Nvidia? Like, come on now. Like, seriously? Like, what is the gamer going to do? What are they going to do? So Nvidia knows they got them. They know they got them. So it's like, they complain about AI. They know the gamers are complaining about AI. You know what? They literally don't care. Because at the end of the day, they know the gamers are going to give them the money. And they can charge whatever they want. That's how it is. Especially with this AI. Like, AI drove the price up. Everything's up. RAM is up. So it's like all the more we can just like readjust MSRP due to whatever external factors. So Congress. Oh, hold on, wait. Oh. Well, I don't know. I don't think Intel's in a bad spot, though. Intel owes a bunch of money, but I don't think they're in a bad spot. I'll tell you what will put Intel in a very, very bad position. If RTX Spark is considered successful, if RTX Spark can do what Qualcomm's Snapdragon could not do, now RTX Spark is going to be so expensive that it's not going to be for like all the consumers. But RTX Spark will basically lead the way in showing that you can do Windows on ARM successfully if you have good software. So it basically will lay the foundation so that the next generation of Qualcomm or whoever wants to adopt Windows on the ARM-based platform, now they have a better way to do that and achieve success. And that might put Intel in a very bad spot because then Intel might have to pivot really, really quickly. And it's not like Intel can't make their own ARM-based CPU. Intel has an ARM license. I don't know how many people knew that, but Intel can make an ARM-based CPU. So can AMD. Both of them can do that. But the question is, do they need to spend the R&D on that? You know, do they really have to go deep on developing an ARM-based CPU? I would say I wouldn't be surprised if both AMD and Intel today have an engineering team internally dedicated to researching and developing an ARM-based CPU, even if they don't release it to market, because they kind of have to. They have to stay competitive with the industry, and they have to be able to adapt if the industry decides to go full ARM and abandon x86. Now, x86 has its place, but look at what Apple did, guys. Look at what Apple did. Apple successfully made the transition. So there's nothing stopping Microsoft from being able to do the same thing. So Microsoft is the one that could stab them both in the back. In fact, Microsoft already kind of betrayed them like literally 2 years ago with the whole Qualcomm thing. And that's why AMD and Intel formed that. They formed that weird. Remember, there wasn't a. They formed they formed some kind of like industry x86 forum thing. I forgot what they called it. It was not like an alliance. They didn't use that word, but basically it was an x86 thing to basically protect against ARM's attempt at trying to like really, really push into that market. I have to go find the story about it, but this is a thing we talked about 2 years ago. But yeah, x86 is not going to go away overnight. If it goes away, it'll be a slow and painful death. But we all know Microsoft wants to go to ARM. That much is true. They tried it with Qualcomm. Now they're going to try it with Nvidia. Nvidia is far more formidable when it comes to software and far more capable when it comes to software compared to Qualcomm. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. As a tech enthusiast, it looks like it'll be really interesting to see what happens with Nvidia's ARM-based CPU adopting the Windows platform. But anyway, guys, I think that pretty much covers it. Once upon a time, Windows, Microsoft, and Intel betrayed IBM long ago. IBM was the one who they betrayed. It was Microsoft and Intel. They went behind IBM and stabbed IBM in the back. And we all know what happened to IBM after that. Now, fast forward almost, what is that, like 30 years ago now? 30 years later. Now, Microsoft has stabbed Intel in the back, which is kind of ironic. All right, guys. So that probably does it. I kind of feel like I should have changed the diagrams on the paint here more frequently. But, you know, these are the primary points. 2 years ago, the x86 versus ARM war was in full bloom for the entire consumer market to see with Snapdragon laptops. Here we are again 2 years later. Well, it'll be this fall. You'll start seeing RTX laptops. Microsoft is trying to do it again with ARM-based Windows laptops. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that plays out. I expect RTX Spark laptops to be very, very expensive because DGX Spark ain't cheap. And RTX Spark has way more stuff. It's got like OLED screen and keyboard and all this laptop stuff, battery, that DGX Spark doesn't have. So, Microsoft is deflecting their own. Did what? No, Microsoft is doing what Microsoft wants to do. Microsoft wants to achieve the same success that Apple achieved by going to ARM. The difference is Apple develops their own chip to do that. Microsoft has relied on hardware partners. First Qualcomm, now Nvidia. That's the difference. So Microsoft truly must depend on another company to achieve that success, where Apple managed to do that on their own. Hardware and software. So that's kind of the biggest difference. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this episode of Tech Thursdays. If you are new to the stream, we do this weekly live stream show every Thursdays, hence the name Tech Thursdays, where we talk about all things that are relevant to the PC DIY enthusiast space. That is, sometimes includes gaming, but usually it's based off of hardware, like what we talked about today. This week, Computex is happening in Taiwan, so a lot of this discussion is based off of things that have been happening and announced earlier this week or throughout this week in Taiwan. So if you like this sort of long-form, free-form, interactive discussion with the audience, do get subscribed to the channel. It does help me out. And if you want to participate in future live streams that are not just Tech Thursdays, but other unannounced live streams like weekend live streams or things like that, or gaming-focused live streams, do hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when I go live, because sometimes it's completely unannounced And sometimes I do other things too besides just playing games. Like sometimes we do rare PC builds. Although this year is not a really good year to be building PCs, but I might actually build a older PC for like a living room PC. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in as always, and I will see you guys next week. Until then, take care, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.